All of the companies, the billion-dollar giants that exist today, the Nearing that almost hit $1 billion with what they did in skincare, and Jeunesse with skincare, New Skin, Amway, Herbalife, Avon, a lot of the older traditional companies. The new one's growing right now, Lavelle, Improve It. Good companies. I'm good friends with a lot of the CEOs that are out there. I've been on the World Federation PSA CEO Council, and I got to know a lot of these people, and I love the industry. And we were competing in a very crowded marketplace with our product base. And then I was in Austin, and JT gives me a call, and he says, hey, Austin and I were talking, have you ever looked at CBD oil? That's what he said at that time. He didn't say hemp oil, he said CBD oil. And I said, yeah, I know about it, but I didn't think it was legal. I mean, wasn't that kind of your first reaction? Right? And you were kind of like, ooh, this is dangerous. I like that. I'll take two. I'm going to put it on my husband's credit card. That's got my first reaction. And I was like, yeah, no, I don't think it's legal. Started looking at it, and I was like, oh, there's a lot of stuff on here that says it is. So, okay, more due diligence, talking to lawyers, bringing in lawyers that work in the industry, like Hogan Law Firm, the most respected law firm in marijuana and hemp and cannabinoid. And sure enough, I began to explore the Farm Bill Act and how it made it legal. Okay, it's legal. Cool. All right. We need to get this out quickly because this is amazing. Guys, if you put out an email to a bunch of people in the industry and say, hey, we want to start selling hemp oil, I could go out today and I could find somebody to sell me hemp oil to start selling. It would take, by 8 o'clock tonight, I would have 10 to 15 proposals. Yep. Pretty big companies. I mean, that fast. There are 100 out there. I mean, from the big ones, Alexinol, you know, they white label for a whole bunch of people out there in the industry. There's tons of them. So then it became, whoa, okay, now we got like 50 choices. How the heck do we narrow it down? And it was a weird thing by chance in that JT ran into Dylan, who is the producer of this event. He does massive events all over the world. Dylan was in Houston scouting a location for a big event that he was doing for the last Super Bowl. And Dylan said, hey man, I've heard about PrimeMyBody, what are you guys doing? And JT goes, well, we're looking to move into CBD and we're looking to move into hemp oil. And Dylan goes, dude, I've got the guy for you. It's weird how the synergy, when you throw it out there, some people say the universe, and you live from a standpoint of expectation, it's like, woo, all this stuff starts coming at you. Dylan goes, I got the guy for you. And what he introduced us to were the guys that pioneered and revolutionized the extraction process in cannabinoid and with hemp. They did some incredible things from the supercritical CO2 extraction, which made it really, really clean, much cleaner than it had ever been before. And then through those guys, they would go, you know what, the guy that's absolutely the best, the most amazing chemist working in this space, and everybody agrees, you'll probably never get it, but it's this guy named Dr. Christopher Shea, outside of Denver. So we narrowed down, we talked to several of the providers out there, and then we went to Quicksilver to meet with Dr. Shea. And we sat down in that room, and he had his team there, and he started walking through what he's done and his vision and how he's used this and his passion for helping people. And you immediately understood that you're in the presence of somebody that's incredibly intelligent. You also saw that you're in the presence of somebody that's really passionate about what they're doing. And he wasn't passionate about, hey, I'm going to become a billionaire with these products. He was passionate about helping millions of people, which is a huge difference. Because I believe if you add value to people's lives and you truly help people at a fundamental level, the money comes. If you chase the money, you don't ever get it. That's just the way it works. Add value, help people, and then everything else takes care of itself. And the more we talked, and we met with other providers, and we were like, no one's even close. No one's even in the same arena. And started talking to Dr. Shea. And I wanted to get to know him, and he wanted to get to know me. It's a big relationship. I don't know if you've ever formed this type of relationship, but it's significant. We both knew the significance and the long-term ramifications. You want to make the right decision at the get-go. Would you agree that that's important? It's critical. If you want to talk about creating generational impact, you can't do it if you make a mistake when the person that is bringing you the greatest product in the world. The consistency of the product has to be there, to be able to source it, to meet demand, to scale. The intelligence to be able to understand the systems in place that allow you to grow. All of those things. And then most importantly, the personality, the individual, the person that you're dealing with. I knew we would have a connection. We talked about his early days before he sort of dropped out of college for a little bit, and then he did a whole farm thing for a few years, where he did organic farming and goats and all that craziness, because I was stupid enough to do that as well. So, and I was really big into organic goat's milk for a while. How many, two people always cheer about that. Let me ask you, who in this room has enjoyed a nice tall glass of cold, organic, unpasteurized goat's milk today? No, not ever, but like today. No. Okay, one hand. That's the reason I'm no longer in the goat farming business. We had 3 passionate customers. Okay, we'll take 1 gallon this week. Could you make it 2? You gotta afford something. When I knew, yeah, I did that old thing. Chickens, goats, oh, it's quite an experience. Woo! Good story. Good story. Let's tell about it. Chris has done the same thing, and I was like, okay, this guy's nuts. Perfect. He's my kind of nuts, you know. This is a guy that cares about people. He's brilliant. He has created something that is going to stand the test of time, and all of us get to share the shared blessing and the shared responsibility to take it to the world. And it's my goal and my passion and responsibility is to open the rest of the world to you as quickly as possible. Now that we solidified the United States, we solidified or stabilized the emergent environment, now we're focusing on let's get Asia open. Let's, at the first of next year, we get Europe open. We take this around the world. And the person that's going to make that happen to change lives all around the world, not for just this year, but for years and years to come, ladies and gentlemen. Get your notepads out. Your hand's going to cramp up. Ladies and gentlemen, the most renowned chemist in the world of cannabinoid and hemp oil. Please welcome to the stage, Dr. Christopher Shaw.
But you can calm them down and make them restful in their skin, and you can give them the space to do that. And that's what we're doing with this product. That's why it is so fundamental. That's why it can do so many things. We talk about mind-body connection, but how is your body going to rest? How is it going to feel? How is it going to digest? How is it going to repair when it's got this jangle going on, it's got this pain going on? Our football players describe that pain because they've been there. They have that head rattled. They have that inflammation in their brain. They know what that's like. But we're all going through that just at lower levels. Sometimes higher levels. We live in a moldy house. Have we hit our heads a couple times? Have we had infections? Do we have leaky gut? These are all creating that space where our brain can't rest. This product can help that calm down. And when you calm that down, it cascades through the whole body. And the whole body can know rest. And the whole body can heal. So today and tomorrow, I'm going to take you through some things. I'm going to get you to understand the product, to know the product. This whole thing grew so fast, it was almost hard to control what went out there, what information went out there. But everybody knew it worked. They take it, they feel it, it's palpable, the change. But why does it work? So we'll talk more about why it works, what's in the product, why we can say the best hemp-derived phytocannabinoids anywhere. Now, why do we say phytocannabinoids? Or phytocannabinoid diols? We'll go through all that. We'll talk about the delivery system. This is the key. This is the secret sauce. You take a wonderful plant, you take wonderful compounds from it, but unless you can get that in, get it into the blood, get it up into the brain, get it where it needs to go, those compounds aren't going to do anything for you. So the key is how we get this in there. And the beauty here is that this vehicle that brings those compounds in is a medicine in itself. So just in case you didn't know who I was, Christopher Shea, PhD, a PhD in environmental metals chemistry after I was an organic farmer. In fact, I was an organic biodynamic farmer. Because I was raised by academics, and I went into school believing in nothing, and I thought I could follow this science path and make a change in the world, and I was disillusioned in school. I just didn't feel that it was really taking me anywhere. I was studying environmental treatment of environmental chemical spills, and I found they weren't really doing anything to help. That's why I left school. I went into organic farming. I did all these different things. And it was super special testing, and so I went out and started a company. You know why? One of my spiritual teachers said, "You gotta go to Boulder, you're gonna start this company." I said, "What? What are you talking about? I'm not gonna do that." And so I put my resume out everywhere, nothing happened. I went to Boulder and started this company. And so I'm testing mercury in the environment, and I'm like, what am I doing? And then I was like, oh my God, it's all in me. I got all these amalgams. And I start testing people. I'm like, oh, here's the problem. We got to clean people up. And clean people up, I had to get this stuff called glutathione into the body. And yes? Who loves glutathione? Oh, I think I know the next product.
Yeah, so do it.
You hear that, Paul?
Do it. Do it.
So to get that into the body, I got on these things called liposomes. These little spherical vessels for getting things that diffuse passively right in your body, right from your mouth, your stomach. And that led me down the line to doing CBD. So, why do we love CBD, the phytocannabinoids? What do they do for us? Turns out the biggest class of receptors, so receptors are things on the edge of your cells that respond to things like hormones, neurotransmitters, signalers throughout the body. And they take cues and they turn these into proteins and they organize the biochemistry around the things that are hitting the receptors. So you have hormones, you have testosterone, you have estrogen, and you have receptors for those. So there's a lot of different chemicals you make and a lot of different receptors. The biggest class of receptors in the whole body are cannabinoid receptors. Why? Is it because we smoked pot since the beginning of time?
Yes.
I hear a lot of yeses there, but it's not really the answer. The answer is the endocannabinoid system. We make cannabinoids inside our body. And these are neuroendoimmune modulators. They modulate the way we make hormones, the way we run our immune system, and the way we run neurotransmitters in the brain. And they're dominantly in the brain, the central nervous system, and in the periphery on the immune cells. They're super, super important. And they exist in everything above an insect. So all higher life forms, their dominant receptor set for modulating neuroendoimmune are cannabinoid receptors. We make these. So the dominant ones are CD1, which is in the central nervous system. There's CD2, which is controlling inflammatory processes. To give you an idea, the central nervous system, if you were to take THC is going to go in and it's going to strike the CB1 receptors in the central nervous system and cause the psychotropic effects. I didn't say that. Now, if you have CBD in there too, the THC is going to be split in its roles, and it's also going to address the CD2 receptors. And the CD2 receptors are the more important ones for all the therapeutic benefits. There's also other ones. There's the, these are funny ones. TRPAs and TRPVs, these vanilloid receptors, transient receptor, potential vanilloid receptors. These are other ones that they're starting to find, and these are associated with pain and itch on the skin, and why CBD is good for a lot of topical rashes and pain. So there's a whole system that cannabinoids fit into. Now, CBD does not directly attach to these receptors. If something attaches to a receptor, it's called an agonist. And if something blocks a receptor, it's called an antagonist. So, CBD is not an agonist for either receptor, but it's a modulator of the receptor. It sets it up. It sets the stage where our endocannabinoids, or other plant-derived cannabinoids, are given a balanced approach to the cannabinoid receptors. So, a lot of people, one of the things that we have to dispel as a myth is the idea that THC is required for, quote, activation of the CBD. THC is not required for activation of CBD. And the reason is that CBD is modulating what your endocannabinoids are doing, and it's increasing the endocannabinoids. So first, let's look at the endocannabinoids. The first one is anandamide. Who knows what the word ananda means?
Bliss.
I love you guys. You know how many doctors know what ananda means?
Zippity doo
In
dah.
Santa Monica, maybe they know, but in Missouri, they don't. So ananda means bliss, and this is the bliss molecule. It was first identified by the great Raphael Mechoulam. Now, if you guys, just a couple of things I'm going to give you along the way. Like, if you guys are going to be good cannabinoid salespeople, you have to know a couple of things, and you must know that man's name, Raphael Mechoulam. So St. John the Baptist of cannabinoids. He's at Hebrew University. They identified this in 1992, and it goes after both CB1 and CB2, It's found in chocolate. It's thought to be the reason why people really like chocolate, why it makes you feel better. You're stressed out, you eat chocolate, you get a little blissamide there. It is also produced in the body during meditation. Any of the meditations that produce a blissful state, which is all of them if you're doing it right, are helping you produce anandamide. And this is also part of the runner's high effect. So that's our first one. And then there's this other one, 2-arachidonyl glycerol, which we call 2AG for short. There's even higher levels in the central nervous system than the anandamide, and very high levels in breast milk. Part of why those babies sleep so peacefully.
Wow.
It is also both the CB1 and CB2 receptor agonist. For a while they were trying to figure out, is it a neurotransmitter? Is it a neurosignaler? But then they found it's a cannabinoid, and it's working with this cannabinoid system, neuroendoimmune. Neurotransmitter, endo is your hormone system, and immune, your immune system. So you'll hear people say CBD increases endocannabinoid tone. Now, what does endocannabinoid tone mean? All right, so sorry I don't have a laser here, but over on the left you'll see about in the middle 2AG. That's 2-arachidonyl glycerol, the one in the breast milk. CBD stimulates the production of 2AG, so it's making you make more 2AG. Then you have anandamide. Anandamide is produced, and like all neurotransmitters, it's produced and also decays, it breaks down. And CBD blocks FAAH, the enzyme that breaks down anandamide. So it's causing a synthesis of 2AG and a pooling up of the anandamide inside the synapses. This is increasing your endocannabinoids. This is a big part of why you take CBD and feel it so quickly. You pull up your own cannabinoids. And these cannabinoids are very specific for the CB1 and CB2 targets. This is why you don't need CBD to activate, you don't need THC to activate CBD. Now that doesn't mean that we don't want a pool of different phytocannabinoids, and we'll talk about what are the phytocannabinoid diols listed on there. It's good to have a number of different cannabinoids, a number of different terpenes together in the mix, but you do not need the THC. So think of CBD as, oh my God.
A laser?
Look at that, I got a
JT!
laser.
We love you! I got a laser.
Pretty weak laser, JT. You ever heard that before? Sorry, JT. All right, so CBD is setting the stage. When it comes to THC, they talk about, as I said before, CBD is modulating the way that the receptors receive the cannabinoids. It sets up the stage for them. But you are making the dominant agonist, the anandamide and the 2AG. Second reason you don't need the THC as part of the whole healing of CBD, gene transcription modification. Big word. And we'll talk more about that tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be more sciencey. Today's going to be laying out the stage. So, when we're talking about the brain and we're talking about neuroinflammation, it's really easy to talk about CBD. Tomorrow, in fact, on the next slide, we talk about neuroinflammation there, brain on fire. And in neuroinflammation, in that little cyclical diagram on the right, there's something called a microglia in the brain. It's an immune cell in the brain, and it's not supposed to release pro-inflammatory compounds, but certain things signal it to do that. And then on the right is a neuron, the nerve cell in the brain. And the microglia attacks the nerve cell with pro-inflammatory compounds, and then the nerve cell fights back. Even though these guys are on the same team, they start a little war with each other, and that induces neuroinflammation. Now, CBD is able to change the way we create things in our brain. So, when we talk about genes, genes are just potentials. Genes are information that we have to make things. It doesn't mean that we will or will not make them. Certain cues modulate what things we're making at what times. And CBD goes into the brain and it turns up a number of genes that are beneficial genes, including genes that make glutathione. Who loves glutathione? And superoxide dismutase. Who loves superoxide dismutase? And we can start getting more and more esoteric with the things that we're reducing there. But the glutathione family, all the things that work with it, all come up together. That's antioxidants, detoxification, protein repair. All that goes up. At the same time, it turns down a whole set of genes that are pro-inflammatory. There are many triggers that make us go out of hand in inflammation. And CBD tamps that down, turns up the glutathione system, lowering inflammation in the brain, which is then sealing up the blood-brain barrier. And at the same time, it's modulating those cannabinoid receptors and making more anandamide into arachidonoglycerol. So when I say it sets the stage, it's setting the stage in the way it modulates the receptors and makes them receptive to the endocannabinoids. It's setting the stage in the way that it builds up the pool of endocannabinoids. And it's setting the stage in the way that it turns up the glutathione system and turns down all the inflammatory processes.
Ow!
Can you repeat that to your downline?
Okay.
We'll make a little video. And you just say, this is this! Each other, the water-soluble heads. And when you put that in an aqueous or watery solution, you get that spherical vessel on the right that we call a liposome. And so it's like a little cell, and we can make them small enough that they'll diffuse right through the mucous membranes in your mouth, your esophagus, stomach, upper GI tract, and carry something right into solution. Carry your nutrients right in. You can take what was a limited absorption and increase that. You can increase it many, many folds sometimes. So when you're looking at something like CBD, if you just take CBD in a raw oil in a capsule and swallow it, you're getting 6 to 10% absorption. You just paid a lot of money for not a lot of absorption. High cost, low absorption compounds are the ideal target for these kind of delivery systems. And we can increase that 5, 6, 7, up to even 10-fold, depending on how good the native GI tract is. And very importantly, we get immediacy. You've all felt the immediacy, haven't
Yes.
you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Boom. Nothing speaks to you like 2 minutes and you're in.
Ah, woo! That's it.
Next slide, please. So, turns out that if you didn't even put anything in the liposome and you took the liposomes, they would be incredibly therapeutic. And in fact, we make products that are just tons of phospholipid. Because phospholipids making up the cell membranes are a huge deal. And it's not just the cell membranes. If you want to speak eloquently about phospholipids, look up Bruce Lipton's work.
Oh, yeah.
On epigenetics and membranes. So Bruce says that the real intelligence of the cell is not in the nucleus, That's just the library that holds all the books, that have all the coding for all the things that we could do. But it's the membrane that reads the environment and decides what's appropriate for the resources we have. What should we do given where we are now? And when those membranes are damaged, this signaling starts to go down. Communication, cell-to-cell communication, and communication inside the cell, having that work right demands healthy cell membranes, which demands healthy phospholipids. You see all of these things on the outside of the cell. All these structures there are involved in this intricate web of cell-to-cell communication. So when you're taking the phospholipids, you're feeding your cell membranes. The phosphatidylcholine in those lipids goes into the membranes. Or in your brain, it can be used to make acetylcholine. But the story on the membrane goes farther than that. What people often miss are the membranous organelles. So if you remember the term organelle. So in my body I have organs, heart, lungs, liver. In the cell I have organelles. And all of the important organelles are made up of membranes. And because the membrane sets a charge difference, there's a separation of charge there, like an electric, it's like a capacitor. And that energy is used to drive enzymatic reactions. Here we have the mitochondria. What do the mitochondria make for us? ATP. God, you guys are good. They make all of our cellular energy to drive all our reactions. On the left, you have a healthy mitochondria, and in that wound up structure in the middle, that's a membrane. That's a bilayer membrane. And it's housing the electron transport chain that's decomposing your food and bringing it together with oxygen and spitting out ATP. And the green dots coming out of it are ATP, and going off the side is a little bit of red dots, which are free radicals. A healthy amount of free radicals. But on the right, where they damage the membrane, now you can't tie together and thread the needle of those different reactions in the electron transport chain, and instead of making energy, you make free radicals. That's chronic fatigue. That's worn down, foggy system. And one of the oldest therapies for fixing that is phosphatidylcholine therapy, taking a lot of phospholipids to rebuild those membranes. Now, people know mitochondria, but not many people know the endoplasmic reticulum. That's my favorite organelle. Why is it my favorite organelle? 2 minutes and you'll know. Over there on the left, that's the steroidogenesis chart.
Oh my gosh.
Cholesterol going down through all these transformations is going through membrane-bound transformations. The pink bars are where the transformations are in the mitochondria, and the green bars, they're in the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. So all of our sex hormones and glucocorticosteroids are made through transformations on those membranes. And when you feed phosphatidylcholine into the system, you feed those membranes. And there on the left is a picture of the green, you have mitochondria, the yellow are the endoplasmic reticulum, and the bottom left is the Golgi apparatus, also a membrane. And now that they're fine, that they're made, and they all hang out, they touch each other, and they talk to each other to unify all these reactions that are keeping you alive. Those are all mediated through membranes, using phospholipids, the same thing that we're making, using to make the delivery system for our hemp. And on the right, that's a hepatocyte. That's your liver. Liver totally depends on phospholipids. All right, so we had our first picture of a liposome over on the left, and that was just phospholipids and water. Now this sort of furrier, wilder looking thing on the right is starting to incorporate other surfactants into the membrane so that it can house multiple different compounds, and it can start to do really really difficult, complex chemistry. So now we're getting into really the kind of particles that we make. Now let's look at a couple other particles. So we talk liposomes, but really, you'll see on the model, this is nano-emulsified hemp oil. So I want you to understand now the kinds of particles there are in the domain called lipid nanoparticles. So lipid nanoparticles are different spherical particles with different compositions made to host different compounds. So, on the bottom left, JT, where's my laser? Follow my finger. Water-filled on the left, that's the liposome, or liposome. In the middle, that's oil in the middle with a single layer of phospholipids around the outside, and that's called a nanoemulsion. Oh, he's back!
Oh,
Hi, JT! Oh, that looks good. I don't know, that's not that good. Must be bouncing off of it. All right, I'll go below it. So there's the water-filled one. The middle is an oil-filled one. That's more like what we're working with here, nanoemulsion. The oil in the core has the phytocannabinoids dissolved with some terpenes wrapped with the surfactants. But the one above it is more like it. So you've got phospholipids as your dominant surfactant, and then you've got a co-surfactant. A co-surfactant is another surfactant which works harmoniously with the phospholipids to make a stable membrane. That's the analog of vitamin E called TPGS. We'll talk about that later, what that is and why that's in there. We'll talk about every one of the ingredients. Everything that's in there is in there to make what it is. There is no reason other than that is what makes these particles. It's what makes them hum. On the right, we have that more gnarly one, but this is just to give you an idea that when you really get into delivering a lot of compounds, the particles get more complex than you see them as just the lipid bilayer. So how are we going to get to know these? You're out there in the field, and you have this amazing product, and you're showing it to people, and you're from Ojai, and somebody goes, this other guy here in Ojai, he says like, man, your stuff's not gnarly, or it is gnarly, or something like that, and, you know, really his has the quantum magnetic field around it. And then you give a bottle to Chris, and he goes, what is this crap? Oh, it's got a lot of language around it. So we're going to teach you how to visually assess some of this stuff. So the easiest way to characterize these particles is by size. And here, smaller is better. And so visually, you see on the right, you see those, each one of those is a lipid bilayer. The top, the MLV is called a multilamellar vessel. So you see a bilayer, and then there'll be a water layer in between, and a bilayer, water layer, bilayer, and then a water core. Down below it is called a large unilamellar vesicle, and then on the bottom, the small unilamellar vesicle. So lamella is a layer. So unilamellar is one layer versus multilamellar, multi-layers. What you guys have is at the bottom, a small unilamellar vesicle. The upper two, the large unilamellar vesicle, those, I said 100 to 300, but those are really 200 to 400 nanometers usually. And they look like milk. You shake them up, and they look like milk. They're white like milk. And then at the top you have the multilamellar vesicles. When you see those are thick, they're like a paste. If you ever had like Live On Labs vitamin C, that would be a multilamellar vesicle. There's only one or two things claiming to be a liposome or a lipid this or nano this out there in the CBD world. And both of them are large unilamellar vesicles, if they're vesicles at all. I'll show you a picture of one of them. See, when I started showing you pictures of going from just phospholipid bilayers into having multiple components in the membranes, that's because just lipid bilayers cannot house cannabinoids. It is chemically impossible. Unless you just put a tiny, tiny bit in. And a lot of people are trying to use a standard liposomal format for doing cannabinoids, and it can't be done. And they're just selling you on the dream of the liposome, not the reality. So if you're in Ohio, just look at it and say, dream on, buddy. So, let me see where we are. All right. Size and uptake. Let's first look at that, and then we'll talk about what the word nano means. So, size and uptake. On the left there, you see those bars, and there's a black and a white bar for each designation. The designations there are size. This was a cell uptake study, and they took a fluorescent compound that doesn't get into the cell unless it was in a liposome. And so they have no liposomes, and then there's no fluorescence. The size of the bar is how much fluorescence there was, and that's how much got in there. The black bars are 15-minute incubation, and the white bars are 60. So just look at the black. So the first is no liposome, nothing gets in. The second is 239 nanometers. That's the low end of anything that you'll find on the market in those white liquids. Little bit gets in. Then you go to 168. Then 90, you're starting to get a significant bar. Then 79, 64, and 50. See how fast that uptake rises as you get down below 100 nanometers? That's what we're looking for. The small unilamellar vesicle between 20 and 100 nanometers. Our products are typically, the hemp oils range between 20 and 50 nanometers, which is, well, the biggest bar there is 50. So it keeps going up as you go below 50. So we're in the range where you get very rapid uptake. That's the immediacy. All right. Now let's take a little sidebar and talk about nano. So a nanoliposome, a nanoemulsion. Nano is a split word in this world. A lot of people are afraid of the word nano because, and there are good reasons, there are many mineral nanoparticles that are used in industry as catalysts. And these can get into the environment, and they can get into people, and they can lodge in the organism and create free radicals in there. They disrupt chemistry, and there's not really good mechanisms in your body to get those things out. These are cadmium sulfide particles, zinc oxides, silver oxides, titanium dioxide particles. This is where nano is a problem. But in lipids, it's not. Nano just means less than 100 nanometers. It was a size range determined by the nanotechnology industry early on, just to differentiate when you were getting into this small range where these catalysts worked real well. So that pertained to mineral catalysts. But the word stuck for a measure, anything under 100 is called nano. So if you're a nanoemulsion, you're an emulsion that's less than 100 nanometers. A nanoliposome, you're less than 100 nanometers. So 100 nanometers is 0.1 micrometer, it's 0.0001 millimeters. It's just a size designation. Now, the body is a lipid nanoparticle generator. It does these things. On the right, you see the lipid nanoemulsion. In the middle, a liposome, and on the left is what's called a chylomicron. Notice they look very similar. A chylomicron is what you make in your GI tract, and just inside your GI tract, they're little particles that you make to move triglycerides to your cells to use for energy. The outside of them is phosphatidylcholine, and the inside are dietary triglycerides. And their size range, 70 nanometers to 200. As you use up the triglycerides, they get smaller and smaller until you get around 70 nanometers, and then you recycle them. Your body makes these particles. This is not scary. And you have enzymes throughout your body to take those lipid particles and break them, either move them into membranes, break them down into ATP, break them down and use them for acetylcholine. They're called phospholipases. Breaking the lipids, phospholipid breakers, phospholipases. So nano is not scary. That could be another day. But we use it because we're trying to distinguish ourselves from other products that are far above this range. Now, fortunately for us, and there's a picture of some of our hemp nanoparticles, and that's 20 nanometers about. But fortunately for us, this is a very visual thing. And when you get down to about 100 nanometers, these products go from being clear to going to opaque to going to transparent. Because, and this is kind of a cool talking point, around 100 nanometers, the particles are smaller than the wavelengths of visible light. So light's traveling, and it's got a big particle, it goes boom, it bounces off of it, you see it looks white. But when the particle's small, the wave just sails by. That's why these are transparent. And so if somebody's selling you something that looks like milk and says, oh yeah, it's 85 nanometers, you know it's not true. And I'll show you some examples of that. So let's move to, there's an example. This is a liposome. That's a 70 nanometer liposome right there. And that was put into a centrifuge tube. And we'll see a couple pictures like this. And we put it in a centrifuge, and what that does is speed up time. Because time is gravity working over time, separating oil and water. What are all these? They're essentially emulsions. They're mixtures of oil and water. And when we make them right, those mixtures don't separate like oil and water usually does. Oil goes to the top, water goes to the bottom. So here we're making a salad dressing that never comes apart. So we can put it in a centrifuge and see if it's going to come apart. It's one of the ways we evaluate products. So this one has been centrifuged. You see it's the same from the top to the bottom. It's transparent. And there's the sizing on it. It's 70 nanometers. Here were some competitors' products. And these were in CBD. I'll show you the CBD next. This was another product. And on the left there, it's kind of yellowish, and you see there's a thick layer at the top. That's called creaming. Those are broken down phospholipids that go up to the top when you centrifuge. Then there's this sort of transparent area, and then a very thick area at the bottom. So there's three distinct zones in there. That's a very unstable particle. And this guy who was making this was using my marketing literature and trying to say that he was smaller than ours. But you can just look at it and you know it's not. And so when you put it through the laser sizer, it tells you it's 309 nanometers. The one over on the right will look a lot like the products that you see out there that are in these lipid deliveries. Dose of Nature looks like that. I don't know about the Ohio stuff. I haven't seen it recently. It should look like that on the right though. And when you measure it, it's 324 nanometers. Very big. Very big does not get you immediacy. You'll get some bump in absorption, but it won't be real good. In fact, when we did look at the products out there, two different liposomes were brought into us to look at for CBD. And one of them had about 30% of what it was supposed to have, and the other had 50%. So when you don't make these right, they'll often separate. And then when you're bottling it, you'll lose a lot of the CBD. And so I'll show you an example of a product that's not made right. So on the left is the PrimeMyBody hemp oil, nano-emulsified, totally stable, top to bottom. And these will be stable like that for over 2 years. On the right, elixinol. I wasn't supposed to say that.
Oops.
Thank you.
Front row.
And what they did, because he didn't understand that you can't do this with his liposome system, and it kept falling apart, so they put a whole bunch of xanthan gum in it to make it really thick, so it wouldn't separate.
Wow.
And then he put it in a centrifuge, and it splits into 3 distinct levels. Like, you made it so easy for me. Lay up the softball.
Woo!
So, this is a couple of years before anyone will have anything good. So that's really good for you. You have no competition.
Woo!
What better can you hear? All right, so how does this stuff work? Does it go in? Of course it goes in. We felt that. But here's some data on it. This is some early data that we got. And we went and measured, we took 10 people and we did 5 time points over the day, dosed them up, took their blood, and that curve at the top came out of it, and then we plotted that against a pharmaceutical curve. And in the bottom curve, they used 10 milligrams. In the top curve, we only used 5. There was a 5.5-fold increase in bioavailability. And that pharmaceutical is already supposed to be a high bioavailability spread. So you can take that one to drink. You can take it to the brain. So these formats are more expensive than just buying CBD raw, but the reward is this super accelerated bioavailability, the therapeutic nature of the vehicle itself, and that immediacy. When your brain is frazzled or fried, and anxious and foggy, you get relief immediately. All right, so let's talk about the ingredients. So people ask me all the time, let's start with ethanol. Is what are going out after this? So why is the ethanol in there? Because the ethanol has to be in there. That's why the ethanol is in there. The ethanol has several different functions in this. There's a blend of water, glycerin, and ethanol that set up a chemical space where the particles have enough flexibility to be cut down into small sizes, and that they want to stay that way. You're finding when you make these, when you make particles for a lot of different products, each product, each thing in there wants a slightly different particle. It's living in there, it's the house for it. And the particle to be a certain size wants an environment around it that's conducive to it becoming that size and staying that size. And the ethanol is a big part of the particle's happiness. Its stability in its size range. It's crucial. You move that down, it doesn't work. You move it up, it doesn't work. Or you have to do it very, very differently. The ethanol also is a big part of the permeation across the mucous membranes. Ethanol and glycerin are both permeation enhancers. They're helping the particles get through the mucous membranes in your mouth and as they go down. Glycerin is doing that too. And thirdly, the combination of the ethanol and the glycerin together does something called lowering the activity of water. This makes it so that the microbes, the bacteria, the fungus, can't grow in it. It makes it self preserving, so you don't have to add potassium sorbate or other stabilizers like that, preservatives like that. You make it so they can't get water in there. The second thing that does is it prevents the water from breaking down the molecules in there. There's a very delicate dance between all of these ratios. If you were to come in and watch R&D in our lab, it's a harrowing event. There's like so much at stake, and we're always trying to do the most radical thing. You know, lipozymes used to be one-trick ponies. We get one thing in there, vitamin C. Now it's like, all right, I'm trying 30 this week. And they're all totally different. Now we gotta make 7 different particles, put them together at the end, they all have to be stable. There's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot of decisions. And they're not based on money, like what's the cheapest ingredient. They're based on making the best product possible. So, let's talk about some other ingredients. Okay. Do we have to? Yes. All right. Orange oil. Why is there orange oil? Ew, it bites. It burns me a little. I don't like it. Tough one. The orange oil is part of the particle. Remember the particles that have like an oily center? That's actually part of the oily center. It's a great solvent for cannabinoids. And so it's an intimate part. You know, it looks simple, like, well, there's this oil in the middle and there's a layer of phospholipids on around the outside, but it's actually layer after layer after layer after layer of these things organizing according to their natures. Everything in there is important. And limonene is the main component of the orange oil. Limonene, look it up. Just Google limonene or go into PubMed and look at it. They'll talk about it being an NRF2 upregulator. It's turning up all of your antioxidant detoxification genes. They're using it in cancer therapies. It's all over the place. It's a beautiful molecule that has a lot of good effects to it, but for us, it's a physical chemistry effect. And it's also one of the major terpenes found in cannabis and has some synergistic effects with the cannabinoids. The phosphatidylcholine is from sunflower. We used to use soy. Everybody is so afraid of soy. But the grades of phosphatidylcholine that we get are so high. They come into us, raw lecithin is like 15 to 20% phosphatidylcholine, lots of other junk. And if you're looking at soy, raw soy lecithin, yeah, there's other junk in there we don't like. There's estrogen-like compounds, there's soy proteins. But when you get a 95 to 100% PC, there's nothing bad left. It's all pure. I'm just lining you up in case the sunflower phosphatidylcholine supply tanks again. This happened. This is actually really true. I mean, this will sound like a joke, and it's almost comical, but 3 years ago, I almost had a nervous breakdown because we switched everything to sunflower. And then all of a sudden, the world sunflower PC supply tanked because of the damn Ukrainian rebels.
Those rebels.
Swear to God, biggest sunflower lecithin plant in the world, Cargill in Ukraine, they took it over. All of a sudden, I can't get PC. I almost want to tell you who I met the other day, though.
Jello.
It was so exciting! I'm at the bar last week at Institute for Functional Medicine Conference, and I start talking to this guy, and lo and behold, he's making PC from hemp seed oil. I couldn't believe it. That somebody slipped me a Mickey. But it was true. We're going to look at that. No guarantees. It has to be good. That would be amazing. All right. And moving along, the last song that we have, well, let's discuss phytocannabinoid diols, and then I have and then they're going to kick me off the stage.
Oh, wow.
So phytocannabinoid diets. Why do we say phytocannabinoid diets? It's kind of a complex thing. There is pure CBD now has a drug application for it, and the definition of that is it's like a 99% pure synthetic CBD. Natural sources with multiple cannabinoids are still not that drug. And so we normalized or set the concentrations there according to a class of compounds called phytocannabinoid diols. So a diol, like cannabidiol, will have, now if JT had a good laser for you, this would be easy. They have two hydroxide groups, OH. See the OH on the top and the OH on the going sort of the bottom left. That's cannabidiol. Now the one below it, that's supposed to be cannabidiol. What's the one below? Oh, sorry. The one below it is CBDV. I didn't type that in there right. Cannabidiol. CBDV also is a diol. You see the two hydroxides, but a shorter carbon chain. There's an OOH. And on the bottom is cannabidiol. They call it the mother of cannabinoids. It's the one that all the others are made from the plant. And also two hydroxides. So a diol has two hydroxides versus tetrahydrocannabinol has one hydroxide. So those are the diols. And when it says total phytocannabinoid diols, it's the sum of all of those. All right? It's a really nice space. And it's very rare to find things, especially like the second one. I know it doesn't say CBDV, but that's CBDV. It's a really precious one. And that's at 8%. The CBD is around 90%. CBDA is about 0.5, and CBG is running around 2. Each of these batches varies a little bit, but that's your general outlay, and that's what phytocannabinoid diols are, and that's why we use that term instead of just looking at cannabidiol. Right? And THC content in this product is tested at below 0.002%. THC free. That is a big deal. Now, remember, so there's confusion. Is this an oil? Now, yeah, we're calling it hemp oil. We do a lot of things. We call it liposome, we call it hemp oil, just for simplicity, but it's not. It's a nano-emulsification of hemp oil. Remember, the CBD is in that particle, and down in the container down there, those particles are dispersed in the water, glycerin, ethanol matrix. So if somebody asks, well, what percent of CBD is your hemp oil? That's not what you're talking about. You're taking an oil that the sources are between 60 and 80% CBD. You're putting it into those little nanoparticles, dispersing those into water. The net final solution is 0.8%. Don't get stuck talking about what percent CBD your product is. That's a non-discussion. It's like putting CBD in MCT and diluting it out. You're just making it, because otherwise you'd be taking this like tiny little bit. You're only, what's your dose? 6, 12, 20 milligrams max. That's a tiny amount. You need it dispersed into something, and we're dispersing it into something that has super high uptake. All right? Now, back to ingredients. And this is a tape. These are ratings from the Environmental Working Group. I know it's a little hard to read that. But these are the different ingredients, and the Environmental Working Group is a great group that looks at ingredients and cosmetics and foods and rates them according to their hazards. You know, how toxic is this thing? And it's a 1 to 10 scale, where 1's the best rating and 10 is the worst rating. And so we put, and you're gonna see more liposomes and emulsions come out of cannabinoids, and you want to look at what are the qualities of these things. So at the top is phosphatidylcholine. Phosphatidylcholine, when it's a purified one, like the 90% source that we're using, gets a ranking of 1, the safest there is. And on the right, I have the dollar value. It's very expensive. It's 30 to 40 times more expensive than raw lecithin. Below that, vitamin E TPGS. I come to find that in the vitamin industry, they just call this vitamin E. I used to call it what it was, vitamin E TPGS, tocopherol, polyethylene glycol, succinate. Now, people get worried about that because there's polyethylene glycol attached to vitamin E. But as with all things, danger or lack thereof is a matter of quality. Polyethylene glycol, it turns out, is not a problem. What is a problem with things like polysorbates, like polysorbate 80 and 60, and other pegs like pegylated castor oil. The problem with them are the impurities in them. There are things called dioxanes, which are carcinogens in cheap pegs. Now, TPGS was made for children that lacked bile production. That's called cholestasis. Cholestatic children could not extract vitamin E from food, and they would eventually get incredibly ill from vitamin E deficiency and die. So they made a water-soluble vitamin E so that they could drink that and absorb it in the GI tract. It was already emulsified for them, like the bile salts would do. Now they, to restore their status, were taking between 4 and 6 grams of this pure TPGS per day, sometimes for up to 2 years. To have a safety profile worthy of doing this, they had to get the most expensive grades of PEG to do this. And that's why Environmental Working Group rated this ingredient a 1. You cannot do any better. It is clean, clean, clean. And even good friends of mine have asked that. We're used to trigger words, like soy, a trigger word, PEG, a trigger word. But trust me on the sourcing of all these things. I mean, even you compare that right below that, raw lecithin is a 3 to 4. The pegylated castor oils are 5, so polysorbate are 3. So these ingredients are all highly, highly vetted. And the doctors I hang out with range from guys who work in the Cleveland Clinic to guys who are totally esoteric. And everybody comes to the conclusion that these are the best products possible. So now, what's on everybody's mind out here is, oh my God, he's got quicksilver hemp oil and he's selling that and it's cheaper than mine. What am I going to do? Wasn't that on your mind? Yeah. Well, what did I do? I made you a better product.
Yes.
Keep the price the same, 33% more phytocannabinoid in there now. There's 400 milligrams per bottle, 16 milligrams instead of 12 in your 4 pumps.
What?
You know it, baby. And the price.
So, I don't have to worry about price anymore. Oh, by the way, Christopher Shade is our scientist. Everybody on Facebook, how's it going? No kids, Dr. Lori already told us.
Oh, man. Love this. He's made a better product for us that he's not selling to anybody else. Cheaper per pump. I got that. Cheaper per pump. Unreal. So, we got the message there. Reach underneath your chair real quick. Grab the raffle ticket that's